tomato savor in the shape of a tomato?
Yes.
I love it.
All right, so sip one.
We're pretty sober at the start of this one.
No, we're 100% sober. Unless, did you drink this morning?
No, of course not.
I don't believe him.
Happy Sunday, everybody. We finally finished the first 2 episodes, and this episode represents the start of episode 3 of The Sopranos. When the show starts out, Uncle Junior and his lackey Michael are having lunch. All you can really see is that they're having a soup of some sort. I couldn't identify what it was, so I was like, well, I gotta use one of the soup recipes. And then Uncle June says this one line.
Well, I think you should have taken care of this Christopher Maltasante thing the minute it first happened. You should have sent a clear-cut signal to it. You with Junior Soprano.
Take it easy. We're not making a Western here.
And I figured, well, what do they usually eat in Westerns? Beans. So since one of the recipes in the Soprano Family Cookbook, normally I would hold it up, but Chrissy's standing next to it. One of the recipes in the Soprano Family Cookbook is Escarole and Bean Soup. The ingredients include olive oil, chicken or beef broth. I went with chicken. Actually, I was just thinking about this in the bathroom. If you switch out to like a vegetable broth, not only is this a vegetarian-friendly dish, but you could switch out to a vegetable broth, and it's vegan-friendly. Just skip the cheese at the end step. Garlic, escarole, which you gotta go to a really specific store in my town to find escarole, and I went to 3 of them, and I was like, I'm done, I'm substituting for kale. Remember, when it's a recipe, when you're cooking, you can substitute, you can make changes, but on the list of acceptable substitutes, kale is at the top of the list.
It's a bitter, but it's also hearty. Like, it's not as flimsy, it's not like a spinach where it's gonna wilt very easily. It's a hearty leaf.
Spinach is also on the list of substitutes, but for that reason that Chrissy just mentioned, kale's the better substitute. I didn't introduce you. This is my sister from another mister,
Hi.
Chrissy Bixby, aka my best friend's wife. Some peeled Italian tomatoes, chopped up, some cannellini beans, was it?
Cannellini or Great Northern.
Or Great Northern. I don't know what Great Northern beans are, so I went with cannellini. And then a cup of small elbows, or small concelli would also work here too.
Also, when you have a can of like whole, unpeeled, stewed tomatoes, and especially if you have kids or if you're like me and you are a kid, just squish them with your hands. You don't need to like drain or chop them, just like squish them. And it's a great way to get your kids involved in the cooking process.
Right now, my goddaughter is our live studio audience, and we're trying to get her involved in cooking, but from the observe from a distant standpoint. So if you hear giggles or crying, the crying might be me, but the giggles are probably my goddaughter. So first step is we put the olive oil and garlic into a saucepan.
Yep. Saucepan, chili
Or pot.
soup pot.
I'll let you take over. We skipped ahead to having all the escarole, or kale in this case, already in the bowl, but the book goes into more detail, tells you trim off the base, clean by the ribs where most of the dirt collects in a leaf, and then cut it in about inch strips. I failed to mention all that because I already have it pre-done. We're gonna cook the garlic in the pot for over medium heat, which I actually put it on high. My bad. We're gonna cook it over medium heat now until it's brown, which usually like what takes like a minute, you said. And then after that, we add in the escarole and tomatoes.
And I'm just gonna put this in.
So now Chrissy's got it all in there, kind of mixed up a little. We're going to cover it and cook it for about 20 minutes. And then we'll check back in. Okay, so 20 minutes has elapsed. So at this point, we are just going to put in the broth and the beans. As you can see, I used some of the time to clean up bowls. Another 20 minutes on the clock. Give it a stir, mix it all up. Pound of scarole or kale really does shrivel down into nothing. Enjoy your next 20 minutes off. Just like I do with my relationships, don't forget to stir the pot. Kale has never smelled so good. It's the garlic. So, it's not a pasta dish, it's a soup dish. So,
Sorry. Are you denying me more?
Not at all. I'm just, for those just tuning in, because I didn't start the camera when I started talking. Okay, so it has been another 20 minutes since we added the beans and the broth. And while we were sitting here, Chrissy and I were like looking at this much pasta and thinking, shouldn't we add more? And it's a soup, and a lot of the broth has gone down. So here's the amount of the recipe says to add. And there's some more. We'll compromise between the whole box and not the whole box. And then we just stir this in. Try to get all the elbows covered with liquid. Now it should be about another 10 minutes or until the elbows are tender. I can honestly say that I've never been this excited to eat kale.
Okay, good.
Because, you know, it's kale. But this actually, all right. Yeah, there's no broth left in this. You know what I got to do for like the building of time here in this kitchen? Salt and pepper to taste when you add in the elbows.
Whoopsie.
And the broth totally absorbed by the pasta. Not totally, there's a little bit at the bottom
Just
there.
a little bit, but it's more of a stew than a soup.
Yeah.
But we're both pasta fanatics, so I'm not mad at this.
Please, Pam, I want some soup. Sprinkle with some cheese. Parmesan Reggiano or Romano. Here we go. It is, of course, the dangers of cooking channel. You eat it while it's still boiling hot.
Burn your mouth out. It's for a good cause.
It's for a good cause. Burning my mouth for you people. And because I'm really hungry. Oh, there you go. The cheese at the top was a great finishing touch. Nobody ever texts me. Now I'm filming and I get a text.
Yep.
The cheese at the top is a great finishing touch. All of the usual bitterness of it. It's toned back. It's still there. I'm not gonna lie and say, oh, it's all gone. Definitely toned back. The garlic was a great way to start off the dish. I could definitely repeat this. As we know, I don't do a lot of vegetarian cooking, but this actually is a good soup to go before my steak, especially with the fiber from the kale.
That'll help later on after the steak.
Definitely. Please subscribe, share, hit me up on all my social medias. It should be scrolling at the bottom now. Check out some of the other videos and tune in next week. Speaking of steak, the Fagioli episode. Those were delicious. So, anyways, we'll catch you next Sunday. Manja. I forget that there's beans in there.
Yeah, me too.